Afternoon, everyone. I can't help but comment that it feels a bit bizarre to be standing this high above everyone else, especially when we're kind of talking about the idea of dismantling hierarchies of knowledge and, leveling the playing field a bit. But at least we have a group of us here that includes some of our community panel members. So I'm Erin Bohinski, Samantha Stanjevicic. We are from CSIRO. Daniel Panizo and Keith Noble are not from CSIRO. They're actually members of the Townsville Community Panel on Novel Reef Interventions. And because this is a co-designed collaborative process, we felt in that spirit, it made sense to have all of us presenting. I'll try not to take up too much time, but we'll just acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we are gathered on here today, and the traditional owners and custodians of the Great Barrier Reef land and sea country that we are all working to improve for the future. Okay, let's see if this clicker, if I can make this work. Yeah, thank you.
We should have a workshop next time.
There we go. Okay, that's the title slide. There are a few others to acknowledge as part of this work. This is part of the Reef Restoration Adaptation Program, as you can see there, that you've heard a little bit about already today, I think. There's some acknowledgements at the ends, but to save time, I'll leave that until then. Okay, so it's quite an exciting time to be working in social science in the reef space. There are sort of two intersecting trends here that I think are worth noting. One, as you heard Stuart talk about this morning, the reef management paradigm has shifted. We're no longer doing more of the same, but we're doing things differently. And that's absolutely essential given the urgency of climate change alongside a range of different pressures. So this work recognizes that all of those things need to be done. It's a multi-pronged approach to reef restoration and adaptation. Now, at the same time, there's been this huge explosion in participatory processes to allow the public to have more of a say in decision-making on matters of science and policy. Global Climate Assembly is one such example. I really like the message here from Involve, which is an organization in the UK focused on public participation. We've heard quite a bit about trust and the importance of gaining public trust in science. This is suggesting that we need to do the opposite as well and trust the public on matters of science. This is also becoming more and more prolific in some of the science journals. We're seeing a lot of articles about contested technology issues and how to involve the public in these, and that there are these tested processes and methods available to do that. So we're going to talk about one of those approaches today that we trialed through the Reef Restoration Adaptation Program on community panels. It's an approach that's been adapted from an existing methodology, participatory technology assessment model. And it's really about creating a space for exchange of knowledge and information and learning between scientists and community members about these reef interventions. We established the first panel about a little over a year ago, and we ran that process over almost a year and identified members of that process through an open call. So we put an ad out, responded, we reviewed applications, and we ended up with 13 members. Two of them you'll hear from in a moment. And this is one of several engagement activities in that Reef Restoration Adaptation Program on engagement. The project that Kirsten spoke about a little bit earlier with Carl is another example. And with that, I'll hand over to Daniel.
Thank you, Erin. These process include 5 meetings, as Erin said, through a time of 10 to 12 months. Basically, we met on the morning, we spent the whole day together, and we had these meetings where we just listened to the scientists during the morning, and then we split in smaller groups. We basically brainstorm ideas to answer some questions that they gave to us in the morning. We constantly swap in between groups to keep the ideas floating. Yeah, so as I said, we had this intervention scientist with us all day. They weren't a bias for this process. They basically clarify ideas, questions, and they dive a little bit deeper on the research with us. It was a two-way communication between the scientists and the community. And at the end of the day, we usually walk a little bit around different facilities, have access to technology that was being used for these two interventions. We got basically a hands-on action on kind of like on the corals to know a little bit more and to put our brains on that, on the Great Barrier Reef, to help us thinking what was the risk that they were into and how we can assess those risks and come with some ideas, with some opportunities, with some answers, with ways to mitigate those risks. That's the risk framework that Erin said earlier. That's where this panel was adapted from. Basically, we had different we have different identify different risks and we characterize them. Those are basically some of the tables that we came out with, and we through these meetings tried to answer some questions, tried to put some information and give a little bit of our point of view to the scientist. That's one of the final products. That's the idea, to just come up with something that it can be tangible, something that we can share with people, something that we can turn into something more shareable. For example, we identified this risk, which could be the salinity of the environment, of the air, alterations on rain patterns, and we come up with some answers to that risk, how to mitigate it, and what can we do to reduce the impact of this risk. Okay.
Thanks, Daniel. I get the sense we're doing a bit of the interpretive dance up here, team. So, look, the novel reef intervention I was involved in, which is coral aquaculture and deployment, was probably at the least risky end of the human intervention compared to, say, cloud brightening, because reef restoration is already occurring in the GBR and around the world, but at the same time, consequently, robust discussion was had, and new insights were delivered. So, for example, the idea of frankencorals, that is that by interfering with the genetic composition, diversity might be affected, which was identified as a social cultural risk. But the understanding that, or consensus, was this is a matter of understanding communication more than a likely outcome based on the scientific evidence. And early on, risk mitigation strategies could be related around communication and engagement. So I'm not a reef scientist, but I have worked at the intersection of landscape management and science for a long time. So when this opportunity was made available, the EOI, it appealed to me, the very idea of scientists engaging with the affected community or the end users at the beginning of a project, rather than serving it up on a plate and wondering why no one wanted to eat it. So, because science is a decision-making tool, it's a tool for society, and so society needs to understand the tools. We know the saying that a poor tradie always blames their tools. So if we're going to avoid that, we need an engaged and informed community for science to operate in. So last year, I was fortunate to attend the UN Convention on Biological Diversity in Montreal, which spotlighted the global distress and desire to do something about climate change and biodiversity loss. So 12,000 people, 200 countries, 700 companies in one room discussing one thing, a nature positive world. People rely on the Great Barrier Reef for recreation, for employment, for cultural identity, for their sense of place. And Australians want to look after that. We see the money being spent. But Australians have an important decision, 14th of October, to recognise our First People. But either side of that decision, we can learn from Indigenous Australians' unbroken connection to our country and that understanding that sustains people, and because country sustains people, people have an obligation to look after country. So this research will deliver new regenerative industries for the Indigenous people and local communities who live in place.
Now we've run out of time. I will ask permission for just 1 minute, which is the concluding slide. So for us, having these 12 months to have community and scientists engage with each other has been really a privilege and quite a unique experience. And we're in the process of collating all the insights and lessons learned from that process. And that's not just us scientists, but also from the community members, having done interviews with them about the whole process. And we're planning to co-author a paper on the panel process itself as a whole, but also in terms of doing the risk and analyzing risk and coming into dialogue and talking really deeply about what risk is. So some of the examples of things that will come up in that paper have been put up here on the slide, but I won't go into any detail. The only thing I would like to highlight is that even though the panel has concluded, it's formally finished, the kind of insights and the ongoing kind of feedback from the panel members is still ongoing. So they're feeding into ongoing discussions within RAP with the independent risk review group, for example, but also with the intervention sciences that were part of this conversation dialogue with us. And also it's feeding into the design of a second panel, which we hope to initiate in the coming months. So it's an ongoing process. Thank you very much.